Shalom, shalom. Hey, I just want to
Shalom.
go ahead, shalom, sorry.
Shalom.
Hey, I just want to do this. We want to do this video on 1 Samuel chapter 20, because what they try to say is that they try to discredit it being the new moon because they say 3 days later it was the Sabbath because David ate the showbread. So we want to go through the scriptures and see if, in fact, if it was actually the new moon, and if David did eat the showbread, or if he ate it on the Sabbath day, or exactly when did he eat it, right? So let's go 1 Samuel chapter 20, start at verse 1 through 5.
Okay, 1 Samuel chapter 20, starting at verse 1. And David fled from Naoth in Ramah and came and said before Jonathan, what have I done? What is mine iniquity, and what is my sin before thy father, that he seeketh my life? Verse 2. And he said unto him, Elohim forbid, thou shalt not die. Behold, my father will do nothing, either great or small, but that he will show it me. And why should my father hide this thing from me? It is not so. Verse 3. And David swore moreover and said, thy father certainly knoweth that I have found grace in thine eyes. And he saith, let not Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly, as Yahweh liveth, and as thy soul liveth, there is but a step between me and death. Then said Jonathan unto David, whatsoever thy soul desireth, I will even do it for thee. Verse 5.
Verse 1 says that David fled he fled from the presence of Saul, and he's questioning. He's saying, well, what have I done? He doesn't even know what he did. So we're going to go into the scriptures and see why exactly he fled from Saul. Read.
Verse 5. And David said unto Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field until the third day at even.
So get the definition for tomorrow, because this says, and David said unto Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat, but let me go and hide myself in the field until the third day at even, right? So it says tomorrow. So what's the definition for tomorrow?
Tomorrow, Strong's 4271 is mahar. Tomorrow, in the time to come, in the future, tomorrow as the day following the present day in future time.
Meaning the next day, in other words, right? The day following the present day. So he's talking in future tense. He said tomorrow is the new moon, right? So it says he's going to go hide himself in the field until the third day. So let's see why he fled from Saul in the first place. Let's go back to chapter 19. Let's pick it up at verse 1.
1 Samuel chapter 19, verse 1. And Saul spake to Jonathan his son and to all his servants that they should kill David. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David. And Jonathan told David, saying, Saul, my father seeketh to kill thee. Now therefore I pray thee, take heed to thyself until the morning, and abide in a secret place and hide thyself. Keep going.
Yeah, verse 3.
And I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where thou art, and I will commune with my father of thee, and what I see, that I will tell thee. And Jonathan spake good of David unto Saul his father, and said unto him, let not the king sin against his servant against David, because he hath not sinned against thee, and because his works have been to theeward very good.
So verse 1 says that Saul told Jonathan he wanted to kill David, right? So Jonathan told David to go hide yourself until the morning. Did I give you the definition for morning? You have the definition for morning?
Morning. Okay, that's Hebrews, Strong's 1242. It's Babakur, and it means morning, break of day. the end of night, coming of daylight, coming of sunrise, beginning of a day of bright joy after night of distress, tomorrow, next day, next morning.
Okay, so it equates the morning with the next day, starting on the beginning of the day, starting at the rising of the sun. So he told Jonathan to go hide yourself until the morning. And he said he's going to go and talk to his father to see what the problem is. And he's going to come back to him, right? Drop down to verse 9, 9 through 11.
1 Samuel chapter 19, starting at verse 9. And the evil spirit from Yahweh was upon Saul, as he sat in his house with his javelin in his hand, and David played with his hand. Verse 10, and Saul sought to smite David even to the wall with the javelin, but he slipped away out of Saul's presence, and he smote the javelin into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. Verse 11, Saul also sent messengers unto David's house to watch him and to slay him in the morning.
To slay him when?
And to slay him in the morning.
So he wanted to slay him in the morning, meaning the next day, which started in the morning at the rising of the sun, right? Go ahead.
And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, if thou save not thy life tonight, tomorrow thou shalt be slain.
So she said, if you don't save your life tonight, tomorrow, meaning the next day, which starts in the morning, that Saul is going to kill you, right? So this is why, let's go back to chapter 20. So this is why David wasn't, this is why he fled, because Saul was trying to kill him. So he fled to get away from Saul, right? So pick it up again in verse 5.
1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 5. And David said unto Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field until the third day at even.
So because that Saul was trying to kill David, David and Jonathan came up with a deal. They said, go hide yourself in the field until the third day, and I'll come and I'll let you know what's going on with my father. But he says tomorrow is the new moon, meaning a future tense, meaning the next day, the day which started in the morning, right? Go ahead, read verse 6 out.
Verse 6, if thy father at all miss me, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me that he might run to Bethlehem, his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the family.
So he said, if your father asks, this is what we're going to tell him. Tell him that I have business with my family and you gave me leave. This is what the deal they came up with for the fact that he's hiding himself in the field until the third day, right? He said, if your father asks a question and he missed me, then you tell him this. Go ahead, read verse 7.
Verse 7, if he thus say, it is well, thy servant shall have peace, but if he be very wroth, then be sure that evil is determined by him.
Well, he said, if it's well with you, he's going to let you know that it's peace. If it's not, he's going to let you know that as well. Jump over to verse 16.
Verse 16. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, let Yahweh even require it at the hand of David's enemies.
So the covenant that he made with him was what we just read, is that he's going to hide himself in the field until the third day. He's going to let him know if his father's okay with him or if his father's still mad at him and wants to kill him, right? Go ahead, read.
Verse 16, so Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, let Yahweh even require it at the hand of David's enemies. Verse 17, and Jonathan caused David to swear again because he loved him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. Verse 18, then Jonathan said to David, tomorrow is the new moon, and thou shalt be missed, because thy seat will be empty.
So again, he said tomorrow, meaning the next day, is the new moon. Read the definition for new moon, huh?
New moon, it is Strong's 2320. The new moon, month, monthly, the first day of the month, the lunar month.
So it says new moon is the first day. It says it's numerically the first day of the month, right? So it says tomorrow is the new moon. So he's saying tomorrow is the first day of the month. That's what he's saying. He said, your seat will be empty. So we're going to see what days Jonathan's seat was empty, right? Read up.
Verse 19, and when thou hast stayed 3 days, then thou shalt go down quickly and come to the place where thou didst hide thyself, when the business was in hand, and shalt remain by the stone Ezel. Verse 20, and I will shoot 3 arrows on the side thereof, as though I shot at a mark. And behold, I will send a lad, saying, go find out the arrows. If I expressly say unto the lad, behold, the arrows are on this side of thee, take them, then come thou, for there is peace to thee, and no hurt, as Yahweh liveth. Verse 22, but if I say thus unto the young man, behold, the arrows are beyond thee, go thy way, for Yahweh hath sent thee away.
But when he says in verse 5, he said, again with verse 5, and David said unto Jonathan, behold, tomorrow's the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king for meat, but let me go and hide myself in the field until the 3rd day. This is the covenant that they made. He said, if I shoot the arrow past you, on the side of you, then it's peace, it's good, it's no problem between you and my father. But he said, if I shoot the arrow beyond you, then it's not good. You need to go because my father's still upset with you, right? Verse 24.
Verse 24. So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat him down to eat meat.
So David hid himself in the field until the new moon, or till the 1st day of the month came, right? Go ahead.
Verse 25, and the king sat upon his seat, as at other times, even upon a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty.
So David's place was empty the 1st day of the month, new moon day. Go ahead.
Verse 26, nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought something that had befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean.
So the 1st day being new moon day, Saul didn't say anything when David was missing. Go ahead.
Verse 27, and it came to pass on tomorrow, the morrow.
Tomorrow meaning the next day. Go ahead.
Which was the 2nd day of the month.
Which was the what?
2nd day of the month.
So tomorrow meaning the next day was the 2nd day of the month, because new moon day numerically is the 1st day of the month. So David's place was empty new moon day, numerically the 1st day, and it says that he was missing on the 2nd day. Go ahead.
Which was the 2nd day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said unto Jonathan his son, wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to meet, neither yesterday nor today? So
he said, he didn't say anything the 1st day, but when the 2nd day came, he said, what happened to Jonathan? Where is he at? So go back over to
what happened to David.
What happened to David? Go pick up verse 6 again.
1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 6. If thy father at all miss me, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me that he might run to Bethlehem, his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the family.
So when David was missing the 2nd day, that's when Saul inquired about it. He said, verse 27 again,
Verse 27, 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 27. And it came to pass on the morrow, which was the 2nd day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said unto Jonathan his son, wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to meet, neither yesterday nor today?
So we already saw that he said in the morning meaning the beginning of the day, starting in the beginning of the rising of the sun. So right now it says that new moon was the 1st day of the month. So David's seat was empty the 1st day of the month, and numerically the next day was started in the morning at dawn at the rising of the sun. The 2nd day of the month, numerically, his seat was empty. So Jonathan's seat was empty 2 days. His seat was empty the 1st day, new moon day, and in the morning at the rising of the sun, the 2nd day, his seat was empty, right? Let's pick it up at verse 31.
1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 31. For as long as the son of Jesse liveth upon the ground, thou shalt not be established, nor thy kingdom. Wherefore now send and fetch him unto me, for he shall surely die. And Jonathan answered Saul his father and said unto him, wherefore shall he be slain? What hath he done? And Saul cast a javelin at him to smite him, whereby Jonathan knew that it was determined of his father to slay David.
So he knew from that conversation that Saul was still upset with David. He still wanted to kill him. Verse 34.
Verse 34. So Jonathan rose from the table in fierce anger and did eat no meat the second day of the month.
Which day of the month?
Was the second day of the month.
Okay.
For he was grieved for David because his father had done him shame. Verse 35. And it came to pass in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field at the time appointed with David and a little lad with him.
So read that definition for morning again, because this says, and it came to pass in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field at the time appointed with David and the little lad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Read that definition for morning again.
Morning, break of day, the end of night, the coming of daylight, the coming of sunrise, beginning of a day or beginning of the day. Bright joy after the night distress, tomorrow, next day, next morning.
So the beginning of the day. So verse 35 says, and it came to pass in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field at the time appointed with David and the lad with him, right? So the time appointed, let's pick that up again, verse 5, and see what verse the time 5. Appointed is.
1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 5. And David said unto Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go that I may hide myself in the field until the third day at even.
Verse 19.
Verse 19. And when thou hast stayed 3 days, then thou shalt go down quickly and come to the place where thou didst hide thyself when the business was in hand, and shalt remain by the stone Ezel.
So pick it up back verse 35, because this is we're gonna see exactly what the time appointed is and when it started, because the scripture says it started in the morning at the rising of the sun, right? So let's see what the time appointed is, right? Verse 35.
Verse 35, and it came to pass in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field at the time appointed with David and a little lad with him. And he said unto his lad, run, find out now the arrows which I shoot. And as the lad ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. And when the lad was come to the place of the arrow which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan cried after the lad and said, is not the arrow beyond thee? And Jonathan cried after the lad, make speed, haste, stay not. And Jonathan's lad gathered up the arrows and came to his master.
Verse 39.
Verse 39, but the lad knew not anything, only Jonathan and David knew the matter.
So only Jonathan and David knew the matter. So he said if he shot the arrow. So let's go back to verse 22. Because this is the covenant that Jonathan and David made if Saul was still upset with him, this was what he would do. Verse 22.
Verse 22, but if I say thus unto the young man, behold, the arrows are beyond thee, go thy way, for Yahweh hath sent thee away.
So right here, when it says in verse 35, that so Jonathan arose from the table in fierce anger and did eat no meat the second day of the month, for he was grieved for David, meaning he was upset. He was feeling bad because he knew his dad still wanted to kill David, right? And it said it came to pass in the morning, meaning the third day numerically. So this is the third day. When he said hide yourself in the field until the third day, this is what the covenant was. He said, it says in verse 39, and the lad knew not anything, only Jonathan and David. So this is showing numerically new moon day is the first day of the month. The next day, which started in the morning, was the second day of the month. And right here in verse 35, which says it came to pass in the morning at the rising of the sun, was numerically the third day of the month, right? So now we prove that that's what that is. So chapter 21, they try to discredit this chapter 20 by saying that in chapter 21 that David ate the showbread on 3 days later, which was the Sabbath. So let's go over to verse 20, chapter 21.
Chapter 21, start where?
Let's just go straight down to verse 3. We're gonna go 3 to 6.
Okay, 1 Samuel chapter 21, starting at verse 3, and it reads, Now therefore, what is under thine hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread in my hand, or what there is present. And the priest answered David and said, There is no common bread under mine hand, but there is hollow bread, if the young men have kept themselves at least from women. Verse 5, And David answered the priest and said unto him, Of a truth, women have been kept from us about these 3 days since I came out, and the vessels of the young men are holy, and the bread is in a manner common, yea, though it were sanctified this day in the vessels. So the priest gave him hollow bread, for there was no bread there but the shewbread that was taken from before the Yahweh to put hot bread in the day when it was taken away.
So verse 3 says, now therefore that what is under thy hand, give me 5 loaves of bread in my hand, or whatever is present. So David was hungry, so he asked for the bread. He wanted 5 loaves, or he said, whatever you have. So verse 4 says, And the priest answered and said unto him, There's no common bread under my hand, but there's only hollow bread. So he said, there's no regular bread. He said, there's only the showbread that was scripturally, the Levites were the only ones that were supposed to eat the showbread. So he said, there's no regular bread, no common bread, right? Verse 5, he said, And David answered the priest and said, of a truth, because the priest asked him, was the men at least kept from women at least 3 days? So David says, of a truth, that they have not been with women at least 3 days, right? So verse 6 says, so the priest gave him hollow bread. So let's see why he asked him, did they keep themselves from women, right? Let me get give me Exodus 19. You have the definition for Kodesh?
Kodesh.
Let's get that first.
Kodesh, Strong 6944, apartness, sacredness.
Sacredness, or set apart, right?
Set apart,
Exodus 19.
Exodus 19 and
verse let me see if I want to go there. I want to go to well, let's go here, because he said this is why the priest asked him were they clean for 3 days, right? So let's pick it up at verse Exodus 19, verse 10 and 11, then we're going to drop down.
Okay, Exodus 19, verse 10. And Yahweh said unto Moses, Go unto the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and be ready against the 3rd day. For the 3rd day Yahweh will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount. Say again?
Which day you said you're going to come down?
And Yahweh, he will come down in the sight of all the people on the 3rd day.
Okay, go ahead.
For the 3rd day, Yahweh will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. And thou shalt set bounds unto the people round about, saying, Take heed to yourselves that ye go not up into the mount, or touch the border of it. Whosoever touches the mount shall be surely put to death.
So verse 10 says, and Yahweh said unto Moses, go unto the people and sanctify them today, and tomorrow, meaning the next day, wash their clothes, and be ready the 3rd day. For Yahweh will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai, right? Drop down to verse 14.
Verse 14, and Moses went down from the mount unto the people and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said, verse 15, and he said unto the people, be ready against the third day, come not at your wives.
Wait, read. Yeah, where you at?
Verse 16.
Read verse 16 again.
And it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled.
So right here it says, so this is why the priest asked David that question, will you have your men kept themselves from women for 3 days? Because like the word Kodesh means set apart, right? And we know that our bodies are the temple of the Ruach, right? And so he says here, if they even with this verse 15, it says, and he said unto the people, be ready against the third day and come not to your wives. So if they were separate from their wives for at least 3 days, then according to the scripture, their body was Kodesh, and they was able to partake of the bread. Now we know that the bread is set aside for the Levites, and they're the only ones that's supposed to eat it. But this is why he said this right here. So this is why he's telling them that. So even if you say he came out and let me do this real quick. Give me 2 Chronicles 2 verse 4, because the bread is changed out on the Sabbath day. That is absolutely true. But the bread is always present. So just because he ate the bread on that particular day doesn't mean that it was the Sabbath day. We're going to show that in scripture. Second Chronicles 2 verse 4.
2 Chronicles chapter 2, verse 4. Behold, I build a house to the name of Yahweh my Elohim, to dedicate it to him and to burn before him sweet incense, and for the continual showbread, and for the burnt offerings morning and evening on the Sabbaths and on the new moons and on the solemn feast of Yahweh our Elohim. This is an ordinance forever to Israel.
So it's an ordinance forever, that it's a continuous showbread, right? So let's see if we can pick it up in scripture, because it says continue. Did I give you the definition for continual?
Yes.
Read that for me, please.
Continually, without interruption, constantly.
But read that again.
It says without interruption, constantly.
So this is a continual showbread for a burnt offering, morning and evening, right? So let's get a couple more scriptures for that. Give me 2 Chronicles 13 and 11.
Second Chronicles chapter 13 and verse 11. And they burned unto Yahweh every morning and every evening burnt offerings and sweet incense. The showbread also was set. They also set they in order upon the pure table, and the candlestick of gold with the lamps thereof to burn every evening. For we kept the charge of Yahweh our Elohim, but ye have forsaken him.
The sacrifices was done in the morning and the evening, right? So the showbread was always present, right? Because the sacrifices was done every day. Give me Numbers 4 verse 7, because it said a continual showbread. Numbers 4 verse 7.
Numbers chapter 4 verse 7. Numbers chapter 4 verse 7, and it reads, and upon the table of showbread they shall spread a cloth of blue, and put thereon the dishes and the spoons and the bowls and the covers to cover withal, and the continual bread shall be thereon.
What bread?
The continual bread shall be thereon.
Continual bread shall be on, right? Let's get another precept, because it's precept upon precept, right? Exodus 25 and verse 30. Because it said continual showbread. So it's proven right now that just because he ate the bread does not mean it was the Sabbath day, because it's a continual showbread, meaning that it's always there, it's always present, right? Go ahead.
Exodus chapter 25 verse 30, and thou shalt set upon the table showbread before me always.
Let's read that again, huh?
It says, Exodus chapter 25, verse 30, and thou shalt set upon the table shewbread before me always.
Before me always. You got the definition for always, huh?
Did you send me that one?
Give me continual again.
Continue it. Okay, the first, I didn't read the first definition. He said, repeat it frequently in the same way regularly.
In the same way, in the same way regularly. So regularly means all the time. They do it all the time. It's the thing that they do, right? Go ahead.
And it says without interruption, constant.
Without interruption, constantly. So that last scripture I gave you, read that again for me. Where it said always.
Exodus chapter 25, verse 30. Is it thou shalt set upon the table shewbread before me always.
Always. The definition for always is at all times, on all occasions. At all times, on all occasions. So go back to that 1 Samuel 20. 1 Samuel 21.
1 Samuel 21.
Yeah, 1 Samuel chapter 21. And where it says, were they clean 3 days? Read that, pick it up for me.
Okay, verse 5. First Samuel chapter 21, verse 5. And David answered the priest and said unto him, of a truth, women have been kept from us about these 3 days since I came out, and the vessels of the young men are holy, and the bread is.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And the bread is in a manner common, yea, though it were sanctified this day in the vessels.
So when David said of a truth that the men were kept from the women for 3 days, they met the requirement of them, according to the scripture, being kodesh or set apart, according to scripture. And so we just showed in scripture, precept upon precept, that the shewbread, in fact, it is switched out on the Sabbath day, but the shewbread is present every day, every day. So when you read this 1 Samuel chapter 21, nowhere in here does it mention anything about the Sabbath, right? It doesn't mention anything about the Sabbath. Go to Exodus 16, verse 22. Because if it's the Sabbath, this is what you're gonna see when it's referencing the Sabbath.
Exodus chapter 16, verse 22.
Verse 22.
And it came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for 1 man, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. Keep reading.
23? Yeah, 23.
And he said unto them, this is that which Yahweh hath said, tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Yahweh. Bake that which ye shall bake today, and see that ye will see, and that which remaineth over lay up for you to keep until the morning.
Great.
And they laid it up till the morning as Moses bade, and it did not stink, neither were there any worm therein.
So when you read 1 Samuel chapter 21, nowhere in there does it reference anything about bake what you're gonna bake, prepare, because tomorrow is the Sabbath. Now, just because we read that David ate the shewbread, we saw that it doesn't mean that it was the Sabbath. The shewbread is there continually or always. So it's always there. The only requirement they had to meet is that they had kept themselves from women, according to the scripture. Like you said, when the Most High came down in the presence of them, it says specifically there as well that they need to be kept from women. Keep yourselves from your wives for at least 3 days. So that's how they were set apart or in a position to where they could eat the shewbread. So according to scripture, it doesn't say that it was the Sabbath day. So according to 1 Samuel 20, it showed that New Moon Day was numerically the first day followed by the second day, which started in the morning, followed by the third day, which started in the morning, which was the time appointed between Jonathan and David to prove that Saul was still upset with him or not. So according to the scriptures that we just read, chapter 21 does not say that. So we just want to do a video real quick and bring out the understanding on chapter Psalm, 1 Samuel chapter 20 as well as 21. And so according to scripture, new moon day is numerically the first day of the month, followed by 6 work days, and the 7th day numerically would be the 8th day, which is the Sabbath, according to scripture. And it's consistent with the 8th day is consistent with the moon, and it would be the half moon, which is the first Sabbath of the biblical month. So I just wanted to bring out the scripture, a little bit of understanding on that. And with that, we'll say shalom.
Shalom.